What's up, boys and girls? Thanks for joining us, Steve, Willis, on episode number 19 of the Phyba Performance Podcast. We're stoked to have Steve with us. Steve and I are old friends from way back in the day. Actually, my introduction to CrossFit was walking into the CrossFit gym not knowing what the fuck it was and seeing Steve doing some wall balls and some muscle ups. That was literally...
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was. I remember going, what's that? What's that fucking thing? And we've also got Matty Legg here. If you guys have been following along with our podcast, we are the founders of Phyba, and we're going to be just having a good old chinwag about performance, about really anything we can kind of, touch on. But I also want to touch on a bit of old school CrossFit stuff. I want to touch on how you got into that and a little bit of background about you. So maybe just to give it a bit of an intro, Steve, can you tell us a little bit about where your, let's just say, fitness journey began, when it took you to the army, and then what you did after that, and how you got stuck into... A lot of people don't actually know, and you're not going to probably say it, but I'll make you say it. Steve actually went to the CrossFit Games, was the best placing male and female CrossFitter from Australia for almost probably 12 years. He was ahead of his time. He was fucking crushing it back in 2008, 2009. So he placed fourth at the CrossFit Games. Was it 09, yeah?
Yeah.
09. So that was like all the boys in the CrossFit scene up until, recently, like in the last probably 2 or 3 years, have been chasing a better placing than that, and no one has been able to do it until Ricky got it last year in a third place. So, mate, you've held that title for quite a long time. How does it? How things have changed?
Oh, mate, just the evolution of it all. Hey, but I guess back to your earlier question, a bit about my background. I grew up in Queensland, kind of got into fitness. Well, I think I was always interested in the physical aspect of life more so than anything academic. And I was always out and about and, playing team sport and running and all the like. And my parents allowed me to start training in a gym at about 13 or 14. So I followed the old 3 sets of 10, bodybuilding, Arnold Schwarzenegger way, encyclopedia of bodybuilding, all the good stuff. And then I joined the military. And I actually joined to do a trade as a chippy, but I then found myself at the School of Infantry. From School of Infantry, I was posted into a unit that went through a role change, which is now known as the 2nd Commando Regiment. And so went through all the process of selection, and God knows how I ever passed that stuff. Honestly, mate, I look back at it, I talk to mates, I watch some of the stuff, and they just absolutely beast you. So, rolling through all of that, being beret qualified and, all the fantastic skills and kind of people that you meet along the way, the camaraderie, it's a job that not very many people get to do or even attempt to do in life. So some of the things that I've done and the skill sets that I've gained, really the only best explanation is watching movies for a lot of people. And doing all of that, I thought I was pretty fit. You're kind of at the elite in that space. And so you're thinking, what is being provided in a foundation framework to execute that job is at the forefront. And then one day, one of my bosses, who was also a good mate, was like, I've come across this website called CrossFit, and they put up these random workouts. And this is back in 2003.
Shit. And
again, thought I was, fit enough. I kind of disregarded. And about 6 weeks later, he goes, mate, have you done one of those workouts yet? And I was like, nah. So he goes, let's do one. So we did one in my front yard. I think took us about 20 minutes. I remember there was handstands. So just trying to handstand against the side of my house was hard enough. Yeah. And it crushed me. And I think for about the next hour, I lay on the ground just trying to figure out what the hell I'd just done. Weighing up my life, weighing up, everything that I'd done to just doing something that had been written, and taken from a website. And my curious side, I just investigated a little more and really started to throw myself at it. And I was leaving the military at that point in time. So I found it a really good transition. It helped to give me some direction and some focus. And the camaraderie, I think that just the hurt that you experience in CrossFit, anyone that does CrossFit knows, and being able to sustain that and working on the skill sets and improving was great for me. All at that point in time, I got into the fitness industry and started working as a trainer in a Fitness First. And I was fortunate. About a year after I'd left the military, an opportunity came along for The Biggest Loser, and then I jumped at that. And cutting my teeth with The Biggest Loser and being in front of a camera and all of that stuff was quite daunting. But essentially, behind that and dealing with the individuals or a team as such, people where they felt their lives had utterly fallen apart and they were trying to regain some semblance of it, I utilised the CrossFit methodology, and it served me well, it served them well, and season after season, we definitely got into the final, few contestants, if not one, and I really put that down to that CrossFit methodology, and just being smart enough in being able to adapt that relative to where a person is at in life. You're not going to throw a whole heap of really complex movements and the skill sets. It's more about that baseline, but the mix up of those modalities. And just that constantly varied component. And you're going after the intensity side of things. And in the early days of CrossFit, everyone was blinded by intensity. And then through the certs and the like, they brought in that kind of that caveat around intensity. What is high intensity? And being relative both physically and mentally, and the rest is your history in that regard.
Yeah, so I had a very similar experience, almost identical to you. I came from a football background. I was young. I was only 20 at the time. A friend of mine, actually I was probably 19 when I first had my first stab at it. It was that 300 workout that got thrown around for ages.
Yeah, the Spartan
300
movie.
for the Spartan movie. And I was 19. I was in the gym. I had a PT come up to me at a Genesis, and he said to me, "Mate, I see you getting in here. You're doing deadlifts. You're doing lots of pull-ups. You like to run." I said, "This workout would be perfect for you. It's a race. It's this workout, and you got to race through the workout." I was like, "What the fuck is that?" I was like, 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 8, bench press, do my pull-ups. Never trained like that before. He gave me this workout, and he said, "Mate, just have a crack. There's a time to beat. And the time to beat is whoever that Gerard Butler."
Oh, yeah, the guy who
like-
kind of starred in that movie.
Yeah, the main fella. And he was like, "Yeah, he's got a time of like 11 minutes and 25 seconds. He goes, "Oh, I think you'd have a good crack." I was like, "Yeah, have a crack." Mate, I sent it on that workout. I think I got I got 14 minutes and 42 seconds.
Yeah, right.
And
I think that actor was legitimate.
Oh, he was fit. Yeah, it was fit. Yeah, apparently they used to do it on a weekly basis. They had been exposed, never been exposed. I was like learning all these movements. I was doing like strict pull-ups and whatnot. And yeah, man, I remember walking through the shopping center and I had to take a seat after it. I was walking through the shopping center trying to get home, and I just remember thinking, what the fuck just happened to me? I can't function. It's like my brother was trying to talk to me, and I'm just like, dude, just give me like 5 minutes. I just can't function. This is half an hour later, and I didn't know what had hit me. So leading on from finishing up in the forces and then moving into being a trainer, did you see the 2007 CrossFit Games and thought, I want to have a crack at that? And the 2008 CrossFit Games, I want to have a crack at that. And then eventually decided, I'm going to go in. When did you go kind of like more to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to go over to Aromas and have a crack.
Yeah, well, I was, in the thick of it, and working in a Fitness First and utilizing or training people using the CrossFit methodology. And Fitness First wasn't too happy with me. And a client that I had where he had his warehouse. The guy next door was a builder, had half his warehouse coming up for lease. So we kind of worked it out, and I in 2008 moved into that space. And a mate I'd served within the army, Mick Shaw, we kind of went in together and we created CrossFit FX, which was pretty much one of the first CrossFit gyms in Australia, CFX. And yeah, that's the one you first went to.
Yeah, that's where I walked into.
So it was only 3 years, 4 years kind of into the industry. You're still trying to build yourself and build that client base. But at the same time, I was doing a lot of the workouts that were being put up. I mean, and I think it's still the same way with CrossFit.com. The workout of the day's put up. People do it. They put their times and whether they did it as RX and the like. So you're going after that, and then
it feeds you.
Hey,
it feeds you.
It feeds you. That's right. But there wasn't the phones and the ability to capture all of that stuff back then. And I think at the original CrossFit in Santa Cruz, which I was fortunate enough to visit in I think it was '07. They would film them, and you had Annie Sakamoto doing them, and Greg Amundsen and things like that. And you're like, man, I'm pulling times that are very similar to all these guys. And that was kind of that '07, '08. And then, the CrossFit Games kind of came onto the scene in '07. I just wasn't in a place to go over.
Yeah.
And then '08, and I thought around that '08 stage, I've got to have a crack at this. So I just kind of made that decision. This is what's going to happen. And then went after it. And through the whole, there was some sectionals, a bit of a regionals, and stuff like that. And I had a mindset back then that I would, I don't know. It was a lot different to what it is nowadays. But you probably got to see it from the outside looking in. For me, I would do anything to beat you.
Yeah.
Like in the regards of, mate, they're just from the word go, from the judge or the like, I had this mentality that I was going to break you from the start.
Yeah,
so I remember
I heard this actually. And
one workout, because we're all going to hurt.
Yeah.
So it's like a motorbike on the starting line. You're winding it up. You're giving it some revs, and then you just dump that clutch and off you go.
Yeah.
And you want to break away so that the thought. Well, this is my crazy mind. The thought in their mind is, he's 5, 7, 10 reps in front, and I'm already hurting. How the fuck am I going to make that up?
Yeah. I'm done. I'll take second. Thanks.
Yeah, and that was just how I went after it. And as anyone that's competed in CrossFit, even in a daily sense, with themselves, the skill sets. There's certain things that we're not so good at, and I guess the psychology behind that, when they step up to the starting line, is there's a bit of a defeatist mentality, because they see a certain skill that they may not be that great at, or they know others are better at, and they've already put the handbrake on.
Yeah.
Rather than just kind of let shit fly and just
Yeah.
go hell for leather.
So on the other side, it'd be if someone's an expert and this is the one event that they reckon they're going to win and get their points out of, and they see you take off like a maniac, then it would totally change their game plan.
It does.
It'd actually make them second guess, go, oh, I'm going to go harder now.
Or you play and you push, you make them catch you, you pull back a little bit, and then they blow themselves up, and then you come home. There's certain skills you may be better on. I remember one workout with the rower in the regionals, and I always knew I was strong in a rower. You'd have to be pretty good to beat me at it, and I think it was there was burpees, pull-ups, and row. It was 3 rounds, 21, 15, 9 or something like that.
At the race course?
Oh, no, that was 2010.
Yeah, okay.
And Mick and I programmed that. I had a knee injury that year.
Yeah.
But blokes were crying because they couldn't even
so
overhead.
So hang on. Let me get.
I didn't get to compete.
You didn't get to compete.
Yeah.
You got to write the program that made other people cry.
Yeah, and but it was more the effort that they put in.
Yeah.
I remember one of them. We made them run the race course, and anyone walked on a race course, with horses run, the grass is like that.
Yeah, it's rough.
Mate, people were crushed.
Yeah. So what we do now in comparison to what used to happen back in the day, for those of you who don't know, at the moment we have the open. If you make the top 10% in your region, you get to go through to quarterfinals. If you make quarterfinals, so the open is done over 3 weeks. You do 3 workouts, you make the top 10%. If we have 9,000 people compete in Australia, the top 900 go through to quarters, male and female. Then from there, you move to quarters. That's over a weekend. I think there's 4 workouts or 5 workouts over a weekend you have to complete between Friday and Sunday. If you then make the top 30 in your region, you then go to semi-finals, which is like the nationals. From there, if you make the top 3, then you go to the World Games. And then the World Games is what Steve and I have competed at. Back then, when you were getting after it, what was the process of qualifying for the CrossFit Games in 2009?
So I think there was like sectionals, regionals, and then it was games.
Yeah. So for the sectionals, I actually heard so sectionals was done at the gyms, right? And then you did a meet where the gyms got together and had a crack.
Yeah.
I heard a story that there was a sand dune run.
Oh yes. Were you there?
No, I wasn't. But I got this from secondhand information. But I heard that you dominated the sand dune run.
Well, mate, I
Cronulla, right?
always back myself in those type of events, not so much the endurance side, but I always knew I was quite strong in the sand. And, you know, I'm 95 kilos at best. And, you know, there's a lot of guys that I was competing against that were in the 60-something kilos, 70. So I thought, mate, I've got to give it my all to beat these little freaking
Whippets.
Yeah. And I just remember putting my
Headphones in.
ears in. I don't even know. I was running a little whatever they had at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I had Lamb of God playing. Anyone heard Lamb of God? It's heavy. And mate, I turned it up so I couldn't hear anybody else.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even really hear my own thoughts. And when they called go, I just took off. You know, I think it was about 2.5 Ks in the sand running. And I just, killed myself.
And if anyone has run Cronulla Sand Dunes, they know how fucking hard it is. It's a rough.
It was 2 laps.
It's a rough old trot. Yeah.
I think it was 2 laps of what they call a Mexican. So the Mexican was down to the water. It was up over a hill, down, up over another hill, then up a big ass hill. Then you ran along kind of the peak of that, back around, kind of flattened out. Then you ran back down to the water and did a second lap of that.
No shit. Yeah.
And,
that's rough.
yeah. So then I thought, I've got this one. So when I showed up in America, and the first event was a 7K hill run.
Oh yeah, I've had an experience in that one.
That absolutely crushed me.
Yeah.
That put me on my place.
Yeah.
That was
similar
that was
experience.
one of the toughest events. Jason Kalipa passed out on that run.
Yeah, he got dead
Smashed his
last.
head on the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah.
He got dead last. And the way that they ran the games that year was a reverse starting sequence. So if you finished in last, you started the next event first.
Oh, okay.
So Jason
Yeah.
Kalipa pretty much knocked himself out.
Yeah.
He stumbled across the line, and within half an hour, he's lined up for the deadlift ladder.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So funny thing is the really cool aspect, I guess, where I started was I started in 2011 as absolute novice, had no idea what I was doing, didn't know it was a thing you could compete in. But then in 2016, my rookie year, we went to Aromas and we redid that day. So we actually went there, we did the 7K trail run, and then we did the reverse starting order and did the deadlift. And then we took, I think, the following maybe the following days, and we put it. So I think we did the first 2 days in the first day of our competition, and holy shit, that run was trash hard. It was freaking, it bent me and I went there thinking I was a good runner. I was like, I don't know
what it is.
I'm gonna crush it.
I think it's just the acclimatization, being in another country.
Hot, dusty.
My legs absolutely blew up.
Haven't run.
That was the start. So that was how they started the event.
Mate,
So I went out thinking there was Chris Spear. I was running against like all those, Jason Kalipa, even Pat Barber was in there, Pat Sherwood.
And Miko was Miko there?
Salo ended up winning that year. There was heaps of well-known CrossFit names, in that.
Was Josh there? Josh Everett?
Josh Everett was there. We're all, myself, Josh, and I think a few other, OPT.
Yeah, OPT.
We're all, very similar age in that regard. And yeah, it was Jeremy from, he's down in Texas, Jeremy Thielens. Oh, I can't remember his surname. But,
yeah, wow, such a blast from the past. I remember that event. I thought, I should try and take a top 5 here. I got freaking buckled and I took 26th place, and I walked away from that thinking, what just happened?
We were very, very similar in placing. I think it was 30 something. Yeah.
And I couldn't understand. And then I didn't do one deadlift warm up, and the first deadlift I pulled because I was too trash. I was lying on the ground like dying, and everyone was just like, I remember seeing Brent Fikowski after the event, and I said, hey bro, how'd you go? He goes, I can't talk. I think I'm dying. And he's like, I got to go to medical. He's just trash.
Yeah. Wow. And then you got to do a full event. Then you got all the other workouts after that.
Yeah. And that was the thing. Because as a rookie, you go in there and you're just like, this is my opportunity to put something on display. And you want to go there and you want.
You're a good runner.
Yeah, I thought I was, but what the issue, the thing that I fucked up with that season was my rookie season was that we wanted to work on all of the things that I sucked at. So I worked on all of my things that I wasn't good at, neglected all the things that I was good at.
So you become mediocre.
So I became shit at everything.
No, that's amazing.
And
that's a problem that a lot of people do. I never forget, we used to, for work, because I'm not an athlete or military or anything, but for work stuff, we always used to do these like personality traits and work out what our skill set is and what our deficiencies are. Every time someone said the whole purpose of this is to actually work out what you're good at and get better at it. But all I could ever see was the stuff that come in as a deficiency. And honestly, no matter what anyone said, I worked on the deficiencies to build them up because I wanted to be good at everything. And then I realized that I started sucking at the things that I was good at. And then I'm still, after all that work, I still sucked at the things I wasn't good at. And then everything kind of sucked.
Yeah.
And then it took like a couple of years of these things to go, okay, now I'll focus on what I'm good at,
Yeah.
accept the fact that you can't be good at everything.
And you want to kill a punch. When you get onto the field, you do want an event where you go, you know what, I'm going to wipe the floor in this event and I'm going to just try and hold on for the other ones. Yeah. So when you were competing, how big, I think back in the day, there was pretty big on zone diet paleo. Were you following anything like that back in the day?
Yeah, pretty much the zone. At that point. Just that breakdown of the old proteins, carbs and fats, mate, and the ratio. And I was
whole food based and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, like definitely
eating
whole
good,
food based.
eating good.
Yeah, eating well and the like. And again, this is what CrossFit kind of promotes, and not just taking it on face value or just through someone else saying this is what you should do. Like doing your own investigation, your anecdotal kind of research and using yourself as the guinea pig for it all. And it was working well for me. But the thing to remember too, I competed. How old are you?
32.
32. Yeah, I was 33 when I competed.
Shit.
So I'd left the army at 29, 30 years of age, and kind of was cutting my teeth, in that whole CrossFit side of things at that age. And that's where I was like, hell. And you hear it from people time and time again. They're like, why wasn't I doing this when I was younger? But now you see so many youngsters doing it, and what they're seeing as the norm, they're just exceeding that because they're lifting and outlifting, those that are in that space already at those younger ages because they're a blank canvas.
Yeah.
That neural adaptation, their mobility and range of movement, hasn't been compromised because you've played a team sport and had the crap beat out of you, or done things like I've done and in the military, and injuries and the like in that regard. And they're weapons.
Well, that was what we were talking about the other day. We think that people, so like yourself and like OPT and all the other boys there, they came into it from, 10, 12 years of doing a profession of some type. And then they got into this thing that was CrossFit, and everyone was kind of excelling in the space, in the early 30s, mid 30s. And now it's like, okay, then some people jumped into it around 18, 19, excelled quite quickly. Then they were, busting onto the scene at 22, 23, 24. Now you've got girls, only girls really, not so many fellas. There was a couple of guys who were quite young, 2021, breaking on the scene and doing well. But the girls, we had a girl recently, 18 years old, and just placing top 10 in the world. Yeah. So these boys and girls are coming through only knowing the sport of CrossFit, and they're learning from a young age the basics of gymnastics, weightlifting technique, movement, spatial awareness. Their cardiovascular endurance is insane, and then you're going to find all these.
They don't have to unlearn all that stuff.
Exactly.
All the other stuff to relearn this. Yeah, so there's
building technique that'd be more concentrated or something like. You got to unlearn
a lot. Your stiffness.
How to get your body under a bar.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of yeah, and the other portion.
Sounds like I've done it.
Yeah. Well, hey, you're on point, mate.
Well, mate, isn't it? It's like the t-shirt wearers, mate. You know, you associate. Like, you're a part of it.
Yeah, I'm watching.
Yeah.
Cheerleader.
We got to get into a class.
Should see my cheerleader outfit. Speaking of t-shirt.
Oh, mate.
The other thing that we thought about as well with this is that we're hoping that the people that do jump into CrossFit and then become very, very good at CrossFit from a young age, and they start, when they're 9, 10 years old, and have a crack and then get good enough to go to the games, they're not missing out on playing. That was the other thing, because they might not get the hand-eye coordination stuff. They might not get the ball passing, the agility work that you may get because it's very box orientated. Maybe if it does progress, they're outside the gym a little bit more. But I remember when I thought I was late to the party in 2011. I thought I was so late. I was like, far out, I wish I started this in 2007 or 2008. And I, did it when I first had a crack. But looking back, it's kind of early days. But the good thing that I think happened for myself and probably for yourself, and Matty, you played footy too, is that we were exposed to we were exposed to rugby league, we were exposed to swimming in the ocean, we were exposed to athletics, we were exposed to all these different sports. So now I'm hoping the kids that do come through still get some type of exposure, because there's a lot of skills to be gained that you may not specifically get in CrossFit. Yes, we're working the modalities of these fitness elements, but to what degree? You know, when we talk about gymnastics in CrossFit, the gymnastics that we're performing, that's like 4-year-old, 5-year
entry level
It's
stuff.
entry level gymnastic. It's nothing like what they're doing at, you know, for the ladies at, you know, 13 years old, when they're kind of at their peak, 13, 14, 15 years old. And for the guys, you know, you're more so peaking around, you know, early 20s and even into your 30s, you know, when we're as strong as we could possibly can be. But from there, how have you seen the progression? How have you seen the progression from, say, 2010-ish all the way through to now? And how do you think someone from back then would stack up against the fellas these days?
Oh, mate,
Like, say, Kalipa 09, or say even like Kalipa 08, you know, Miko 09, chuck them in the field in some workouts. Do you think they still take some of the boys for a run? Or very specific? Do you think it was more specific?
I think there's just too many factors to bring into the equation. Like it's, and a lot of it is limiting too, because what we thought was groundbreaking and at the pinnacle of what could be achieved in the, you know, just physiologically, even I think psychologically, the ability to bear and deal with was how could it get much better than this?
Yeah.
But money, attention, and the more money and attention there is, the more something grows, because you've got all that energy, you know, kind of focusing in, and that's what's happened. And you heard back in the early days, with listening to what you were just saying, how CrossFit first came about was more about the foundation side of things to support sport and you know, first responders and all those other types of things. It was more about, you know, fortifying the essence of what it means to be human and to be able to then perform on top of that. Whereas now it's as it is, it's a sport in and of itself. And you know, being at CrossFit, you can only do one CrossFit workout a day. The human body can only sustain, you know, that type of effort. You know, the programming of 3 on, 1 off. And mate, how many times a day were you trained?
Well, peak volume phase, we were doing track session in the morning for 90 minutes. You might be running mile repeats for, and 75 to 90 minutes. And then you'd go straight to the gym. You'd clock a 2-hour session. You might hit, you know, 3 strength pieces, 2 metcons and an accessory piece, come back in the afternoon and repeat that again.
Yeah. And, you know, see, that's just the level of professionalism that is brought to it, and the need and necessity to be able to, you know, build those capacities. Whereas, you know, in my day, it was you'd hit the one, you know, kind of metcon a day. You might do a bit of lifting here and there, you know, do a bit of mobility, and because mobility, but everyone was like, "What's this shit?" And
I remember trying to coach mobility session at CFX, thinking, I was like, these guys first day in their this mobility session program, and I've got 2 newbies, and I'm just like, guys, we're gonna do some keg drills. Like they're just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I know. And then just, it's just the evolution of it all. And, you know, you've got to be able to outwork to a degree the next. And you know, as we were saying earlier on, there's strengths and weaknesses. And as important as it is to hone in on those weaknesses and kind of plug them, you've got to advance your the things that you're good at too, so that there's that belief, and it just helps with that drive, that level of determination, that will, that want, you know, look, all of those things, you know, and when you need to be assertive, it's there for you. And I think that's what a lot of people in the mainstream miss about, you know, those that are the elite of anything, is the depth and degree they're willing to go to. And not just in an output sense. They'll dial in on everything. As we're all talking about now, sleep, you know, the nutrition side of things, my mobility, my range of movement, my neural facilitation, like how everything is just so integrated and important.
And for that, like, so in terms of nutrition, for me, for a long time, Matt's been helping me with protocols to try and get the most out of my body in the most natural way possible. So for me, it was like, okay, I want to learn as much as I can. So going to the nth degree in everything. I was like, how can I improve my sleep? Like, okay, it needs to be dark, it needs to be silent, it needs to be cool, it needs to be clean. Okay, that's my sleep. Okay, now let's look at water. Where can I get the best water from? Okay, now nutrition. Matt, tell me the best way to fuel this thing. And so for you, Matt, you've been helping bodybuilders in the past to build more muscle. Then you've also, your first product was a CrossFit product back in the day. Tell us a bit about how you see CrossFitters utilizing energy these days as opposed to a bodybuilder, for instance.
The funny thing is that first product that you refer to as a CrossFit product was originally made to treat chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia in my naturopath clinic. Then I had some mates with racehorses. And then I decided if it works on the chronic fatigue people, it'd be interesting to see what happens with horses and dogs and that sort of stuff. So we started experimenting with it and then started obsessing a lot over acid-based systems and redox, like using lactic acid or working out when it's a waste and who it's a waste in and when it's actually used as a fuel. And then we made those products. And I did some phase through bodybuilders, but that was based on the fact that they were harder to kill and cheaper to replace than the horses. So when I did my experiments, bodybuilders are a great target for that because you can't even make them sick, the stuff that they do. And then it takes all those things and you get some decent data. Then the CrossFitters, I started working with some good CrossFitters. Like Andrea Miller was one of my favourite.
Oh, yeah, Roberta.
She was obsessed with measuring and documenting everything. And, Jess Cogler, a few of these people that were good, that I used to work with to actually collect some data and everything like that, and started realizing that what CrossFit was amazing for is that it was that holistic system in the sense that we had to manage anxiety levels, we had to manage a series of events. Like it wasn't that these people compete for an hour or do a half-hour workout, and I can take your medicine here, and then in an hour it'll peak, and then in an hour and a half it's all gone, and we can get that window right because you're going to do another event. Also, what we discovered with the bodybuilders is where they wanted vasodilators. That was the absolute enemy for CrossFit because as soon as you get too much pump, you lose your reps.
Yeah.
You can't actually do the reps. You might have the strength, the ability and all that stuff, but you're just too engorged in the muscles. Get off a bike and then try to run when you've done a vasodilator and your whole lower back and legs don't even work.
Concrete.
I used to develop a lot of other products like rehydration products and that where the marketing guys got involved and insisted this is the healthy sugar, fructose or something. Magnesium's the only healthy electrolyte. Everything else is salt and bad for you. And these people like green apple splatters and diarrhea and all this gut stuff. So over all those experimenting and that sort of stuff, we've ended up where we are now, where we've learnt so much about how to actually make a formula that suits genuine cellular energy that allows people to do WODs over a whole weekend, like just back-to-back events with rest periods and that without having to actually strategize caffeines and electrolytes and sugars within very specific windows where we can just genuinely support someone. And the thing I like about it is it works in with what you guys have all been doing to build up your resilience and basically get positive adaptation from your training. We were talking yesterday about breathing, and we were talking about breathing and that the other day, and see these people doing the cold plunges and all these sort of things. So one of the big features around that is basically stressing yourself, but allowing yourself to be in a position where you'll get that positive adaptation from that. So you'll actually deprive yourself of oxygen is one thing, but if you deprive yourself of oxygen and panic and freak out and all that sort of stuff, then that creates a stress, and that stress could be catabolic and bad. You deprive yourself of oxygen, but then you maintain your composure. You actually let your body know that this is not that stressful for me, that I can actually do this. Then your body will have a positive adaptation where you make more energy warehouses per cell, which then allows you to use the waste that you'd normally be building up where your body's going, man, I've got to get this acid out of my body. And it actually goes, man, I'm going to utilize this acid because he's not breathing. So I'm going to take some of this acid and drive it back in to the Krebs cycle, use it as a source of energy.
It's amazing, hey?
Yeah, and our body, you will adapt that ability to do it if you do those things that put yourself into that stressful situation, but you have the nutrition, you have the mental capacity, the nervous system capacity to actually have a positive adaptation, and you do those things, you get better and better from it. Those same things given to someone else without the intention could be labelled as trauma, and they've never been the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yet you can adapt positively.
So I was about to say, with the military, like you have to be, you're in a very stressful, high demand situation, and you got to make precise decisions that at the end of the day might result in yours or somebody else's, you know?
And the life I've lived and everything that I've done, a lot of reading and educating myself, but nothing to the degree of like what you've done.
You actually do.
But just even listening to what you say and that whole piece around breath work and the like and stress, and from my personal experiences and what they teach you in the army and what you're selected on as well, where people think it's very much a physiological space, is actually awareness.
Yep.
And that's the big difference in most things, where there's a positive effect from it or a negative effect, is based in your awareness of what you're doing at any given point in time in the environment that you're in. And I remember what they used to call a CQB course, so close quarter battle. And, you know, in very confined spaces, you know, very precise, you know, shooting and all that type of stuff. So hostage terrorist type situations. And I remember being taught it and put through my paces, and I was rolling with some like hard hitters, like guys who were fit, who were on song, and things like you'd be given a brief, you're not to shoot through an open door. And you get to that open door and someone would see a target on the other side of it. And that reaction and lack of awareness of what, and recalling or remembering that what it is they've got to do, they shoot through an open door. That's strike one. Yeah, lack of awareness. Strike two, you're gone.
Yeah, wow.
And you could be removed completely.
And they get you into a position of fatigue and
yeah,
stress.
exactly. So that's what they do. Physiologically, psychologically, you know, all those things, sleep deprivation, food deprivation, you know, all that good stuff, which just creates a place that everyone's equal.
Yeah. But you know, an interesting thing, they've done some recent data on these things like these lactic acid, these metabolic wastes. Turns out that lactic acid is one of the best triggers for your memory. So, for example, what happens?
That's probably why in my life I've always pushed myself so much, because I'm actually comfortable
there
in that space.
That's when you learn the best. When you're actually in a state of fatigue, when you're in a state of lactic acid, when you're in your ability to concentrate, focus, and that sort of stuff is kind of heightened to a certain degree. But that's when we actually learn muscle memory, gut instincts, and intuition, and our innate survival responses, as opposed to the ability to study and learn. You learn the ability to have quick reflexes and things like that, but in a state of lactic acidosis is the best way to actually imprint muscle memory, technique, and form, which is why through the military, through CrossFit, through a lot of these things, you put yourself into that state of exhaustion and fatigue where you'd be almost running on nervous energy, but then force yourself to actually learn a technique, or like pull a gun apart, put it back together, and those sort of things. And then that stuff lives with you forever. You go back into that state of exhaustion, stress, fatigue, and bang, it's a quick recall.
Yeah, it becomes
an easy circuit.
So the body just knows then, or the mind, like everything, the system.
Yeah, that's super interesting. We were driving yesterday in the car. We drove from Sydney. We landed here in Sydney, drove to Newey and back down to coach a class at your gym, Steve. And we were in traffic and a truck had pulled over and I thought he was coming right for me. And I saw it out the corner of my eye and I had this shoot of, I don't know what it was, a pump of adrenaline or something, but I had a shoot from my wrist all the way up into the back of my head. And I saw it and I immediately like twitched and I felt this feeling of like adrenaline hit me. And Matt was like, yeah, I saw that coming, but I didn't move. And I was just like, oh, he goes like that. I would have been toast then. I was just like, I had something come over me. I was just like, react quick. Something's going on.
Like that goat, you know, the goat gets skinned.
And I was like, literally, I went from just having just a plain old conversation to be on like high alert. But I don't know whether I'm just running on adrenaline at the moment because we're so busy. But that's super interesting. So for you now, Steve, now you've kind of you've got a gym, and I've been in the gym game as well for a long time. You've got a gym here in Sydney, and you're coaching people, and you're essentially doing CrossFit to a degree, and you're teaching people what they want to come in and get out of it. Have you found that the base level of people you were coaching in 2007, 2006, 2007, 2008 has now risen? Or are you still finding that majority of people, or do you think it's just an exposure thing? Majority of people are still coming from a baseline of, not really understanding at the moment spatial awareness, but are picking it up? Or are you finding that the base level of just human capacity has slightly risen since then? Or do you feel like it's still a wide spectrum?
Oh, it's definitely still a wide spectrum. I think, even in that space, we're talking 15 years. Even back then, we're probably a little bit just tougher, a bit more resilient, but we didn't have the understanding.
Sure.
And that understanding, it's become, has come along with it being part of the norm. And we were saying it, like outside of sport and the like, it's the new human way of expressing themselves is to go into a gym. It's like a cafe. There's a bloody gym on every corner. And people don't feel like their well-being and fitness journey includes the membership and crossing that or into that threshold in a gym. To go out and exercise or do something in a park and the like isn't the norm. Not the norm, but it's that.
It's
how do I say this?
I know what you mean. It's like the way what
Like
fight.
I've got to lift weights. I've got to work at a high intensity. I've got to do these things to deem myself fit or healthy. Eating well, looking after myself, taking the dog for a walk, going for a walk on the beach, just interacting in nature probably isn't recognized or held. The value of it or the depth and degree of it is the weight isn't there like you would if you've got a barbell in your hands or some dumbbells and you got your ass hanging out alongside 20 other people in the class. But it's coming around as well. Like we're connecting back to that and realizing how important sunlight is and even with just sleeping and the like and the whole system.
I think that's a pretty important thing, and for us on the podcast, and Matt talks about this all the time, this holistic system and how we express how our epigenetics are expressing through just the population. We're trying to optimize that the best way we can. And we know that if we are exposed to nature, we're exposed to good quality water, we're feeding ourselves with good quality whole food. We don't really tell anyone not to eat a particular thing, but just add more variety. That's kind of where we're trying to push people to set a foundation of particular parameters that you kind of just stick within. Don't make it too complicated in one aspect, but just say, optimize nutrition, optimize hydration, optimize sleep, optimize the people you hang out with on a daily basis, because you will be that product. You'll be the average of the people you hang around with. And if you are hanging around with shitty people, you will be a shitty person, essentially. And if you're hanging around with good people that are bringing you up and, building you up, and people that are smart and people that are fit, you will probably be smart and fit. That's the key. And so I think you're definitely, the social aspect is something that I always tried to make sure I never lost sight of, especially when I was getting deep into training solo so much. I was like, I need to make sure I'm hanging around with smart and healthy people. And the instant I went and started training with Tia, I instantly got fitter. I was pushing myself harder. I was learning new techniques. I was getting pumped up about sessions more than I ever was. So definitely surrounding yourself with people that build you up, make you feel fucking good is where you want to be. Now, probably final question. Have you ever had any fire to jump back on the competition floor?
Oh, definitely. Time and time again, I find I struggle even watching. And I think that's, the age that I got into it, certain opportunities that came my way and I had to make a choice. And, for me, doing some television stuff with Biggest Loser and the like, I kind of chose that path, over CrossFit, although we still had the gym and I was still, training myself, utilizing that methodology, but I just couldn't put the time in for my own training to be anywhere near competitive. Gosh, I'm 40, I'll be 47 now. So like I think if I knuckle down and I put the time aside to do it, I could definitely be relatively competitive in the age group that I'd be in. But, there's a few things I need to sort out, and it's life, it's responsibilities. It used to be the be all and end all for me. Yeah. Like I was so dedicated and committed and psycho about it. Like, mate, I'd dream about it. Like it was just consumed me. But I've also got kids, there's business, there's partner, there's so many other things, plates spinning that need attention and time that, not,
Your priorities.
not right. Yeah, priorities, not right at this minute. But yeah, every time, I went down to where was it, that one, the
Down Under?
Down Under.
Down Under, yeah.
Yeah, no, you get the bug.
Yeah, you just far out. I want to be out there.
I don't want to be sitting in the damn bleachers watching people. Like, I want to be out there hurting with them.
Yeah.
You
Well, I'll put this to you.
Oh, here we go.
I'll put this to you. Would you consider doing a local partner comp with me in the next 6 months? 12 months.
Like an extensive 6 months.
18 months.
Yeah, all right. But
You can set up protocols. You set up protocols?
Yeah, we'll set protocol. I need, and that's something that and that's just listening today is, that understanding. And you asked me the question before, nutrition, like, early days, not for myself, not really knowing too much about it, and the things that you're taught, CrossFit kind of promoting the those zone principles, but it's so far, down the rabbit hole on all of that stuff and our understanding nowadays, and it's not something that I've like tuned in on, and it's been a bit more, the umbrella around it all for for myself, but also the people that come into our gym. And, some people need a little bit more specificity and help in those areas than others. Others can kind of take what it is that you present them and you say to them and run with that. But I think at the end of the day, it's the ability to just, all right, this needs attention and I'm going to afford this much attention to it and go after it. But also be consistent and patient.
That's it. I can't agree with that more.
Patient. Everyone wants it yesterday.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't happen, it doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what more can you do? And I've realised now that I'm older too, you just got to let them. You just got to let it go.
I agree.
You just got to focus on those that and yourself that that are willing to do the work. And just let the others pass by.
Yeah.
Because you can't save everybody.
No. Well, we say that all the time. If you do the basics extremely well, yes, the 1%ers do count at the end of the day. If you want to nudge that 1 or 2% better, 3% better. But if you're the most consistent worker in the room and you're doing the basics freaking well, you'll probably be elite in whatever category or profession you want to be good in, but just be the best fucking person at consistency every day.
And that's what holistic. Everything's holistic because everything's holistic, whether you believe it or not. Because some people will come out and say, "Oh, this product is gonna, this one supplement or this one herb is gonna make you elite. It's gonna be able to achieve all these things." But then when they come back and say it doesn't work, then they go, "Oh yeah, but how are you sleeping and what are you eating?" First they didn't want to be. So you're either holistic up the front or you're using it as an excuse for a lack of result at the end. So if you want holistic, if you want results, you need to have that whole holistic campaign, which is where you need that commitment and dedication to your lifestyle, but you're also handy to work with people that actually can guide you through the process and let you know when it's a good thing or a bad thing and teach you how to stress your body but become positively adapted rather than stress your body and then break.
And that's I think we've become the two things that I reiterate all the time for myself and to clients or those that are willing to listen is don't always be waiting for direction. Recognize how much we sit around waiting for direction. People get on social media to find direction, to read the quote of the day. Like, mate, your Instagram should be your life. You should be living what like what you're, in that regard. Like, I don't need to be on social media and do all that to get my sense of fulfillment and my joy and my happiness. Like, bring that into your everyday. And the other one is allow your awareness to be your guide to intensity.
What do you mean by that?
Because we're so, especially the Western culture, we're so driven by output that we believe that anything beneficial can only be found in output.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you need
and we're talking, like sleeping, like yoga, like your breathing techniques, like knowing that you need to just put the leash on the dog and take the damn thing for a walk, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah, I remember.
You know what I mean? Like, spend some time with your
when you're either survive or thrive.
Yeah, you don't need to be beating the crap out of yourself all the time. But yet people are either going hell for leather or doing nothing.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you actually saying that to me in 2011. I remember we were talking maybe a couple of months after I started, and you said to me I was training and I was doing some extras after class, and I would do midday class because I used to work at the airport in the morning. I'd come and do midday class and I'd come back in the afternoon if I wasn't playing footy or training for football. And I remember I was coming in every day, like multiple times a day. And you're just like, when, you're still progressing, taking a day where you just come in and stretch for half an hour, 40 minutes and do some mobility. And I was just like, really? And I remember doing it a couple of times thinking, I feel fucking great the next day. Yeah. And I thought to myself, shit, okay, maybe I'm, pulling that, overloading my bucket a bit, and I could, do some more holistic approaches or things that are building the whole circle rather than just, output, and then doing some things to intensify the output, but actually doing something passive.
Well, yeah, I had a podcast years ago with a group that had an online app, personal training app, diet and exercise. They had, I think it was 100,000 or 200,000 people completed data into this app every day for a 12-month period. They shared some of that data with me, and that was fascinating because one of the most things that blew my mind was the best results through those hundreds of thousands of people came from the people that had a 40 to 70% compliance. The actual group that was 80 to 100 or 90 to 100% compliance was, they were kind of had some elite stuff, but they found that the group that was 80 to 100% compliant also was the group that was 0 to 20% compliant. As you were saying, that they go 100% crazy and then they do nothing. But they found the people that were like even 40% compliant got the best results compared to someone that was like...
Because they were consistently at 40%.
Consistently. And some of those were like, chew slower today. And other things like they had kettlebells around the house or a chin-up bar in the house. And if you couldn't do the chin-up bars, hang off it. If you see a kettlebell, just pick it up and move it to another part of the house. Chew slower. Like, they had the very basic things that you could do on every day. If you didn't feel like doing anything, you just do something. Those people got the best results.
And that's like back to my military days and just rolling with people. And people just, they walk around like just with this kind of chilled nature and they're just doing. Yeah. And then when they need to turn it on, damn, they can turn it on. And then others, they're a ball of anxiety. Like they're participating in that space because they don't know what else to do. And then the others, they're just too damn lazy. Yeah, they're just not doing anything. Yeah, and they need a foot in the ass to be, and they need others around them to be the driver to provide that direction.
They go crazy and break themselves and go back to nothing again.
And even like a mate of mine who I've gotten to meet and know over the years, Matty Rogers, he played both codes. Yeah. But mate, if you ever hang with that bloke, the way he rolls around, it's just so like he's doing, but it's just there's a calmness to it. But then I've seen that bloke turn it on against similar ages, mid-40s against youngsters, and mate, his agility and speed, just boom, boom, he turns them inside out.
It's awesome. My favourite here.
His nickname's the Rat. It's just
that's killer. That's killer. When you met a cool person, you just like the demeanor, the way that they just approach life on an everyday basis. You're just like, it's cool. Like a vibe their vibe. That's cool. Really cool. Well, cool. Well, we might wrap it up because it's bloody hot as hell up here. Yeah. But so if anyone wants to come do a session at your gym, what's the gym called?
Get Commando Fit, So just it's all on the socials, or you can just look up Commando Steve and
you'll find it.
Everything's on that website as well.
Killer, cool. So guys, if you're around the Sydney area, you want to come for a workout with Steve, make sure you get down there. But guys, thanks so much. Episode 19, Phyba Performance Podcast, talking all the cool shit. Thanks for coming along. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Steve, for coming on.
Thanks, James. Thanks, matey.